Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 43 of the Hunger for the Hustle podcast. My guest today is coming to me live from Aspen, Colorado. I am, of course, in Melbourne, Australia, where it's 10 a.m. I'm not sure what time is it there, Win. I know it's the evening, but what time is it?
4 p.m. straight up.
4 p.m. 4 p.m. So totally different time zones, totally different parts of the world, but connected here in one place to you all watching. Now, Win is a fellow podcast host. She has cerebral palsy, and her mission is to help other people with physical and mental disabilities to find their voices through written and spoken word using today's assistive technologies. And I was just saying to people, to you off camera, Win, that you obviously have been presented with some pretty hectic challenges in life, but you haven't let that stop you at all. And in fact, you've probably achieved more than most. So I'd just like to welcome you on the show and to that point commend you on everything that you're doing, and just welcome you along today. It's my pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me on, Jake. And yes, as Jake said, my name is Win, W-I-N, and yes, that's my legal name. And please don't call me Charles as my first name. That drives me bats when people do it. And as Jake said, I have cerebral palsy. I have had cerebral palsy for 33 years, and every day is a challenge, but I manage to do content creation full-time with cerebral palsy.
Yes, you do. I mean, you've taken podcasting and social media and you do it as a full-time job, right? But not only that, you've written a series of books, which we'll get into in a minute. But I mean, please talk to us about the social media end, and do you do that for your own brand, your own personal brand, or do you do it for others?
I do that for my own brand, but when disabled people ask me to do it, I do it for them because I'm technology savvy enough that I can do other people's social media, but my niche is being the voice for the voiceless, and my niche is helping others with disabilities.
I love that. I love that niche, niche, whatever you want, however you want to call it. They call it niche there. We call it niche here, right? Same thing. I know tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I love that niche. I think, and I commend you to that point, for helping others, that perhaps have similar or same challenges as you, because everyone deserves their voice to be heard. Just because they don't know how to use the platforms or the technology doesn't mean that they shouldn't have their voices, their story heard.
No,
exactly. So the fact that you can facilitate that for people is fantastic. And I also think that, of course, the online space is a very busy space. The internet has now reached a level of maturity where it is just content at scale en masse every day on all platforms. And I think when you have a niche, when you dial into a certain audience or a certain thing, then it makes it quite a bit easier to be visible in that space, seen, heard, and have your voice, your story, and your message seen and heard. So, I think a niche is the way forward to go.
Yes.
Now, tell me about where and when did you get started with podcasting and perhaps doing social media? Did you start doing it for yourself and you thought, hey, I could do this for other people?
Well, I got started in social media land. I was always on social media as a way of getting out there and as a way of promoting my book to begin with before I even wrote the book, and that was 10 years ago. So by the time I hit publish button on the book, I was already set up to sell that book. And then I took it one step further by marketing the book via my podcast, which is now turned into 3 podcasts. One, The Amazing Voices of Teachers. The second one, The Artwork of CP, which is cerebral palsy, and the third one, which I'm most known for, is Ask Win.
Yes, yeah. And then from there, did you think, hey, I could start helping other people here and doing social media? Did someone ask you, or did you just think I'll put the word out and see what comes back?
Someone literally asked me, they go, can you help this other person who has a disability, who happens to be a very good friend of mine with his social media? And I'm like, sure. So that's how that came to be. But because of my background in journalism, and because I am a self-taught journalist, I'll be a fully accredited journalist. I'll actually have a degree in it in February of 2022. And so my original degree was in education, and I don't know whether I hated it or it hated me, education. And so I gracefully left not gracefully, I left my job I lost my job due to the pandemic.
Right. So, well, what was your job?
Teaching.
Okay, sorry, yeah, with you. Yeah,
I
teaching.
was in teaching for 13 years, and people have asked me this publicly. They go, well, would you go back to teaching and stay in content creation? I said, stay in content creation immediately, because I love what I do. I like most of Americans, most people worldwide, when they dread their job, when their job stresses them out, and they're pulling 14-hour days and thinking about the kids when they go home at night, and which I was. And it's like, no, we need to, especially me, I need to put me first because of cerebral palsy. And if I don't put me first, me's going to suffer, and then I won't have a podcast, because I'll be under the table and wall.
Yeah, exactly right. And like you say, it's about that. I think it's well over 80% of Americans aren't happy in their job, which is just a staggering statistic. I mean, just hundreds of millions of people going to do something each and every day that ultimately makes them miserable. I just can't get my head around it sometimes. Of course, there's people that just just are fine with that, and they just don't see any other way, and they don't think of any other way out. But perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. I think that you did lose your job because it's turned you to something that you ultimately love more, and you can't beat that. You can't just do what you love every day, and if you're great, if you're getting, if there's a financial transaction coming back for that, even better. But just like not focusing on that at the start, and just doing what you love every day, your passion, and just following it, and the money will come eventually, because you'll get so good at it because you love it so much. It's just a natural flow state of what's going to happen. I really do think that.
And if the finances come, great. If they don't, great.
Either way, you're still happy because you're doing what you love, and that's the motivator behind you doing it, not the money. Yeah. Now tell me, I'd imagine, though, along the way, like any business, any transition, in fact, and it's a transition I've been through pretty recently, from job to from employee to kind of just doing your own thing, being a hustler, being an entrepreneur. What was your, do you have some challenges along the way, and could you share some of them with us?
Well, my biggest challenge, there was one small challenge and two big challenges, and the two big challenges came one after another month's apart. And the one small challenge was losing my biological mom, and then 10 years later, in 2019, on May 19th, I got a call that changed my life forever. I got a call it began at 4:45 a.m. actually. And then it progressed into a 9 a.m. call that really changed my life. My dad had passed away, and I was just devastated because I was daddy's little girl. Not to say that I wasn't mommy's little girl, but mommy did the medical end with me with cerebral palsy, and cerebral palsy is a lack of oxygen injury at birth. So yes, I got cerebral palsy coming out of the womb, basically, lack of oxygen. And so I lost my dad, and my dad will always be my guiding light to solo entrepreneurship because that's how I grew up. I grew up with a stay-at-home mom. I grew up with a solo entrepreneur dad. And so I was raised by an entrepreneur. So when I went to day job, I was so ready to leave the golden chains of the golden handcuffs of that day job. I'm like, nope, this is not for me. This is not for me. I wanna go home and do my own stuff. And no. And I kept teasing my fan base. I said, now I just gotta kick the day job out of the way, kick the day job out of the way. And my fan base was ready for me to kick the day job out of the way. They're like, come on, Win, you need to now pass this one. You preach. You can't hang on to this day job forever. You put it out to the universe, kick the day job out of the way. And what was stopping me was I had, even though I loved the kids in my teaching job, the admin side wasn't so great. The admin side didn't treat me well, but the parents didn't want me to leave just because I was teaching their kids about cerebral palsy every time I walked into the classroom. So parents were like, "When can you stay? Can you stay one more year?" And then I was actually out of town when the week before the pandemic, and the week before the world shut down, I was actually at a podcasting conference in Orlando, Florida, and I flew home, and I'll never forget it. I had no one sitting next to me. No one sitting next to me, thank God. And I will never forget it. I started weeping openly on a plane. And I'm like, okay, Win, you're not the type to openly weep on a plane, and you just come off this amazing trip, learned how to be a better podcaster, learned how to get guests, learned everything you could about podcasting slash met your fan base, gave a hug to your fan base. I mean, people were coming up to me in a wheelchair, giving me a hug, saying, "Win, I listen to you, and I love you. Keep up the good work. Why are you openly weeping?" And I'm like, and then by the time I got to Chicago International Airport, Chicago O'Hare, I figured out why I openly wept as I sat in terminal waiting for my flight to Aspen. I'm like, okay, this is real. Well, my life is about to be turned upside down. My situation is about to be turned upside down because I am the social butterfly. I love to go out. I love to see people. I love to do everything else. And so, yeah. And so it turned upside down. So what I decided to do is what I decided to do is dive bomb into journalism.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think, like you said, this year has presented its own particular form and set of challenges, hasn't it? And people have had the choice. Everyone's had the choice to either evolve and perhaps change and adapt their skills, and perhaps pick up something that they had started learning a while ago, a project they had started a while ago, and think, this gives me a bit of time, space, and just ultimately peace and quiet to pick that up again, or to study something new that I've wanted to study for a while. Or
Yeah.
a lot of people have just become extinct in the space. They've accepted the fact that the world has changed and they're not willing to change with it, and therefore it could have been a detrimental effect to them. But you did not do that, Win, and
No,
it does not
I did not.
surprise me at all. You did not do that.
Because I set myself up. I set myself up for success 10 years ago, and I set myself up for success 10 years ago. So I was lucky enough that I didn't have to go searching for a day job. I didn't have to get furloughed. I'm lucky enough that I have the finances to I can't go back to work because I'm medically disabled and
Mhm.
I do have a disability, so I can't go to get a day job and get a paycheck. So it would have to be a very minimal paycheck. Let's just put it that way. And I'm like, I don't want a minimal paycheck. I want something that do on my own and love every day in and every day out. No, because I thought, I also thought, and people don't know this, I also thought when when I got to Chicago International Airport, I thought, okay, do I start looking for a job next week? And then a voice came into my head and said, no, you don't. You concentrate on your degree. You concentrate on what you love. You don't start looking for a job. You don't start looking for a job. You go full on into journalism.
Yeah. And that little voice was intuition, wasn't it? Your intuition telling you
Yeah.
this, you know the path you want to follow. Just have the courage and make the decision to follow it, and never look back. And I think there's a lot of power. I find there's a lot of power in them moments of decision, and you have to ultimately listen to your own intuition in those moments. If you don't, you often look back and you think, I perhaps should have. So
and it was so funny because I remember staring at Chicago to Aspen, and I'm like, okay, I'm going back to home, but my life has turned upside down. And the last person I hugged was my stepmom, and who lives with me, and that was on March 9th.
Now, I just want to make this clear, and it might sound like a silly question, but it's not quite clear in my mind, so it might not be quite clear to the audience. The reason that you lost your job, is that because you can't be really in the public at the moment because COVID poses too much of a risk to you, combined with health issues?
And that's not a silly question. I knew that question was out of someone. They just haven't asked me yet.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that would have it all.
And I'm happy to answer that. No, I am at a high risk. People with disabilities in general are at high risk for COVID. So the reason why I lost my job is because they didn't have a plan. I even asked them, I said, do you want me to come in, mask up, glove off, and help you close out the end of the year and say goodbye? They go, no, we don't have a plan. And I'm like, you dumb-a-dums, you don't have a plan because you were just coming off spring break, and now you have to teach your teachers how to teach virtually. And I'm sitting here, they know I know technology. They didn't ask me. They didn't ask me, would you like to help the teachers learn technology? And I learned from a colleague slash friend of mine that they were doing it all via Zoom, which I knew. And she goes, distance learning is odd. I'm like, well, they could have asked me and I could have sat with you guys and taught you guys in 2 seconds flat if they would have asked me, but no.
Oh well, it was all to your fortuitous game, wasn't it? Because now
It
you do
was
what you love.
all to my fortuitous gain that I said when they said we don't have a plan, it would be safer for you to stay at home because when this was at the beginning of COVID, and I said, well, bye guys, I'm going off to land where I'm loved and I'm supported. Bye.
Yes, I don't blame you at all. And tell me, just on that note, I would like to know, like, what's the situation with the schools there now, particularly in Aspen? Are the kids back to school? Are they still homeschooling?
They are doing distance learning, and they my ex school is doing in person, of course, masked up, and my ex school is a private school, so they have more money than God. And so basically, they are doing in person learning and they are doing everything they can. But the public school is doing distance learning via Zoom. And I think that d- I know the special ed system has always been screwed up. And so I want to eventually, after my journalism degree, go back and get my master's degree in special ed. Not to go back into the education sector, no way, but just to use it as a coaching mechanism and just to because I'm a special ed kid, I'm a special ed adult in my journalism program right now. So I want to refine the special ed system. That's my ultimate goal before I die. I want to refine the special ed system. I want to give all the teachers out there. Number one, I want to give them a hug. Number two, I want to give them at least $900 and say, here's $900 and not tell them I'm doing it. And then I'll take your kids for the afternoon. You go skelter and do classroom management. I'll take your kids for the afternoon and do virtual lesson. I'll do an in-person lesson and teach them about diversity because I think that teachers are getting so screwed over right now, and it's like not fair. And I'm watching this as a disabled woman. I'm watching this as a journalist. I'm watching this as a retired educator, and it's like, nope. The teachers are not getting thanks. The teachers, and I tell people this because I've been there. The teachers and holiday seasons, they get 100 $100 and that's it. All the parents chip in for that $100 and then that's it for the Christmas bonus. Well, that Christmas bonus in my case was spent on my cell phone bill. So there goes my Christmas bonus. And then you get a coffee mug and that's it. And I'm like, no, no, thank you. These teachers this year need about $900 to replenish themselves. And I am not saying that they should go spend it on classroom. Don't spend it on classroom because the inside teacher land is you have to spend your own money on the classroom.
Really?
Even though you get a budget, you have to any extras you want comes out of teacher Susie Q's pocket.
Are you talking about the public school here or the private
I'm
school?
talking about the public school, I'm
Public
talking
school.
about private school, I'm talking about university, I'm talking about every school.
I never
They
knew
do
that.
have a budget, but teachers have to 9 times out of 10 spend out of their own pocket.
That doesn't make sense to me at all. They should be. These are the people that are teaching our future generation, and which is okay. 40%. The children of the world are. I say children of the world. The younger people of the world are 40% of the population, but 100% of the future. And the people that are teaching them should be heavily and finally rewarded to that. And to your point and what you said about the holiday pay, they should be rewarded well in the holiday, because I've never been a teacher, but I've been a student, and I've seen from that end how much of a challenging and probably emotionally and mentally wearing down job it is. And when that holiday time comes, that's really a time that they need to relax, recuperate, and rest up, so that they can go back into the new term refreshed and ready for the challenges of that, and ready to deliver fantastic teaching to the children. So it really surprises me that they're not rewarded well in the holiday period.
learned this year in particular that a lot of teachers are going back into the classroom. It's too much for them. They're resigning. I got a phone call the other night from a friend of mine who was in the teaching sector, and she said, when I quit because it's too much. And I said, good on you. Good on you. You know how I feel. And
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
yeah. So a lot of teachers this year in particular are resigning and moving on to some place else because they can't do it.
And how do you think, on the other end of that scale, how do you think this pandemic will affect children, and the fact that they've been taken out of their familiar learning environment, that many of them, it's all they will have ever known, to be taught, teacher to child, in the classroom environment with many of their friends, their classmates?
I have mixed feelings about it. I know from a special ed perspective that is awful, 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 because there's only so much speech and language and occupational therapy and physical therapy. Physical therapy is not done by Zoom; it's done in person. Thank you very much. And so there's only so much occupational therapy and only so much speech therapy, speech pathology that you can do virtually. And so the special ed system has always been the dot in the fuzzy end of a lollipop, but especially this year, it's getting even worse. And as I said, Jake, before I die and before I can't do this anymore, I want to put boots on the ground. I want to turn the special ed system around.
With a drive like yours, Win, I have no doubt at all in my mind that you will do that. And let's talk about that drive. And I think, where does that, we call it the hunger for the hustle on this show. And I define hustle to be not seeing or liking the circumstances you see around you. So going out there and creating your own. Now, I'm not sure how you define hustle, but I'd love to know what your definition of it is, and what drives yours, because you certainly have a big drive.
My drive is that my paternal grandmother actually named me. Her name was Win, and that's where I get my name. So my paternal grandmother, and she was a nurse too, so nurse in Canada. So I applaud her for all her work. Grandma lives till her 90s, and she died of a heart attack in her own home. But and she knew she was having a heart attack too, because she goes, my heart feels funny. And the next thing they know, they call the doctor and they can revive her. So so I think that is my drive comes from not only my grandmother but my mom. And even though my mom was a stay-at-home mom, she was an entrepreneur for a little while until she had me. But she she taught me how not to be disabled, so
Right.
to speak. She
Mhm.
taught me how to think and how to educate myself and figure out my own problems. And my dad, because he was an entrepreneur, when push comes to shove, you have to figure out your own problems.
Mhm.
So I was lucky enough to have my dad come with me on ski days and do all the fun activities. I was also lucky enough to see my mommy at school, even though she wasn't the type to be the in classroom parent or do all that stuff. She would come to my plays and come to my events, and even though and she provided me with a one-on-one aid, which in private school you have to provide, the family has to provide the child with a one-on-one aid. In public school, the public school has to provide the child with a one-on-one aid.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, and it's interesting that, isn't it, that many of our drive comes from our parents and the things that we saw them doing when we were much younger,
Yeah.
particularly from the ages of, from the ages of like 1 to 5. People think, oh, the kid's not listening, he's not learning. They're listening and learning everything. They're like a sponge. They're taking
Oh, yes, they are.
everything they see around them, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, like with all 5 senses, they're obviously, taste, touch, sense, smell, feeling, but even more than that, they're feeling the vibrations, the thoughts of what's going on around them, and the way that the parents are behaving and acting, and the kind of the sentiment, the atmosphere, the vibe in the home. Like people take that for granted and don't understand that, but and I think particularly that pertains to letting kids when they're really young, have phones and deal with technology en masse. I just don't think it's a good route to go down. But you know, you inherently
No,
you
no,
become you become what your parents were and did. Sorry to cut across you there, but you kind of become what your parents were and did, and just part of them becomes you, doesn't it?
and my whole family is from Ireland. So
Or
for any for any of you that know the Irish history, we are meat and potatoes people, and we work hard to the we get our belly, we do the work, we don't stop until it's done. And so, yeah.
yeah, that's absolutely right. Born hustlers, you could say. Certainly born hard
The
workers.
Irish, oh yes.
Mm.
And so, yeah. And so it it's so funny that people are saying, well, what nationality are you? I am Bahamian, I'm Canadian, I'm Irish, but my main nationality is Irish. And when the pandemic first hit, I thought, okay, this is great. I never thought that the Irish meat and potato famine would come back in 2020. I was never so happy to see food in my life, and it's still true to this day. I'll eat anything and everything that you put in front of me because that is part of my heritage.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It is. It is. That stuff carries on from generation to generation to generation.
Oh yeah,
It really does. Yeah, yeah. It really, really does. And I think I just want to say this: when that you are actually, in my eyes and my opinion, one of life's complete winners. And I think when your grandmother bestowed you with that fantastic name of yours, Win, she laid the path for you. She laid the destiny for you, and then you really have gone forth and lived up to that name. Despite the challenges you've had in life, and they've been pretty varying and pretty vast. You've probably achieved a lot more than some people do who are fully able in all respects. So I just want to say that I really respect that, and I really cherish that, and I think that you truly are one of life's winners. So I commend you
Well,
in everything you do, and just keep doing it. I mean, I know you're never going to stop anyway, because just from the conversation we've had here, that's clear. But yeah, just maximum love and respect to you for what you're doing, and how you're pushing
well,
forward.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And when the going gets tough, and when my fan base, when I think, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, it's too tough, and um, when I get accolades from my fan base saying, "You helped me mow a lavender farm," or "You helped me walk into work," "You helped me clown my kids," "You helped me get out of bed every day because of my own disability," um, then I think, okay, I'll get in front of that podcasting mic, or get in front of that StreamYard and do my job one more day.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to look at it. Just keep pushing, take one day at a time, and just enjoy life. I see that you live with a lot of joy, and I think that's key in life. Once you find true inner joy, that just leads to happiness at scale for you.
Yeah,
And I think through doing what you actually enjoy and love doing, that paired with that kind of attitude, it just takes you very far in life.
yeah,
Now, I want to talk about books now. I can see there's an awful lot of books behind you. I know that you told me off camera that you can't actually read a physical paperback book because of your disability, right? But you like to digest books in audio form. Is that right?
yes. Or I
Yeah.
can digest books digitally.
Yeah.
Although the last time I read a book, I was deeply distracted, and I want to get back to that point. I'm like, people, leave me alone. I was literally on a vacation. I was literally sitting on a couch, and my vacation spot, and my phone rings, and people want me, and I'm like, I'm on vacation. I'm reading a book. Leave me alone. You know that I am. This person knew that I was on vacation too, and I'm like, leave me alone. I'm on a vacation. I need this vacation to come back refreshed, and I um need this vacation to deal with the next transition. And so I like to read books digitally. I like to read books audioly, by audio. And so, but I'm always a lifelong learner. I'm always watching other content creators, except fun fact, Win does not like to listen to interviews, and I don't like to listen to my own interviews. I put them out. I let other people critique them, and I don't listen to them. And I don't listen to when people interview me. I just let it flow and then move on to the next interview. And people are like, why? Because I'm like, I don't like my own interviews. I hate listening to interviews on people's podcasts, even though I listen to podcasts. My favorite type of medium is music, and on the occasion, I'll listen to podcasts when I have time. But I would rather listen to music than a podcast. Jeez.
Hmm. Isn't that interesting that you like creating podcasts, but you don't like listening to them? And yeah,
I
thank you for being honest about
I
that.
do, I do like listening to them, but they have to be particular ones, and I have to be in a really wonky mood to listen to them. Yeah, I just have to be really needing that um, comforting voice, and really just, yeah.
And what kind of books do you really like
I
reading?
um I like I don't like self-help because I I am a self-help book. I like novels. Um I actually like young adult fiction because my brain can process young adult fiction. And a lot of people don't know I have a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, on top of cerebral palsy. And for those of you who experience me coughing during this interview, that is a sign of asthma. And so I'm on the quest of getting diagnosed with asthma. So it's going to be a double diagnosis for me. But, and of course, yeah, asthma is part of my family history too. And so that's going to be a fun diagnosis when I get that. But we'll just handle asthma like we handle cerebral palsy with grace.
Yeah, I just, it's amazing. It's amazing how you just don't let anything waver your spirit, and you just keep on pressing on. And yeah, I tell you, you've really actually inspired me today on this podcast, to do more, to be more, to just do what I have, where I am with what I've got, and just keep pushing. Right, it's the only
Yeah.
way. It's the only way forward. It's the only really way to win in life. To coin a phrase, I didn't mean to say that. And to get closer to your goals and your aspirations. And to that point, like I'd like to talk about, and I know you've mentioned to them on this podcast, but I think they're really important, and I'd like you to readdress them and make them clear, like your goals and your aspirations for the future of what you're doing in the space of social media and podcasting.
My goals and my aspirations are to get 1 million downloads of my podcast, my main podcast, Ask Win, 1 million downloads. And then my goals are to hold a accredited journalism degree and become a journalist. And my goals are to work with big boys. And someone asked me this, and a journalist asked me this once, and he asked me this recently, and his name is Bill Treservant, and I got to interview him. I'm actually working with him and the crew of it. I am BTV, and they're an international based broadcasting crew, and they have a YouTube channel, and I'm part of that YouTube channel. I have a YouTube show, Winning with Win, every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Mountain Time, 12 p.m. Pacific, just to throw that out there. And Bill Treservant said to me, do you want to be known as the disabled journalist or everyday normal journalist? I said, throw every story at me you have, all just taken with a disability and deal with it with grace. And then I might use speech dictation. I will get it edited. I will get a copy written. But I just throw every story at me that you want. And then I don't want to make the disabled, the quote unquote disabled stories, the pity parties, because I've actually done research on this. I did research on this about a year ago, and 9 times out of 10, the stories that involve people with disabilities are pity parties, and they're begging for money because they need a new van, or they need a new wheelchair, or they need a new lift, or they need elevator, or they need a new this. And then it will say grandma carried grandson up 10 flights of stairs. Help me, help me, help me. I want to make it so that it's not help me, help me, help me. It shines on the disabilities. More importantly, it shines on the caregivers for the disabled. And then we can put the help me, help me, help me stories in at the end.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at it, isn't it? It's a really good way to frame it, and perhaps it's not the way it's being framed right now, but if anyone's going to make that difference and change and inspire it to happen, I think it's going to be you, Win. I think it's going to be you. Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's talk. Just pulling back to books, because I know you've written several of your own books, over 13, right?
I'm working on my 12th and 13th Number 12 is ready to go. I just have to put more time into my life to get it to a publisher and then have them publish it.
Yeah, yeah. And the View My Heels book, is that your latest one?
That is part of a novel series I wrote after writing Uncommon When I was so sick of writing about cerebral palsy that I needed break. I needed a creative break, so I decided to write The View from My Hills, and that is book number 1 in the View from My Hills series.
Ah, great. So it's going to be a series. I love that.
It is a series, and it's going to continue to be a series.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm wondering when we're going to close out in a sec, but I'm wondering if you could give to the audience, people who are watching right now, who are inspired, and I'm sure they are, because I'll tell you I am. 3 hot tips, you know, for anyone that's wanting to start their own small business, perhaps doesn't like their job and is thinking about making that transition to doing their own thing, you know, generating their own cash, doing their own hustle. Yeah, 3 hot tips you would perhaps give them.
I want you 3 hot tips, and the bosses out there will kill me, but I want you to email your boss and say, "Can I please have a meeting with you?" And I want you to put in that 2 weeks notice, or however long it will take you to get a replacement for you. Typically in America, it's 2 weeks, and some people make it shorter, but I want you to say goodbye to day job and start this entrepreneurial journey. If you already have a job set up, that's great. But if you don't, especially if you have a disability, I could teach you in 2 seconds flat how to work your magic and use your strong points. That's tip number 1. So tip number 1 is say bye-bye to that day job. Tip number 2 is start what you really love and go into what you really love deeply. Tip number 3 is just do it. Just do it. Tip number 3 sounds cheesy, I know. And yes, it's the Nike slogan, just do it, but just do it.
Just do it. The power of decision.
Yes.
It's so powerful, so powerful. Okay,
Yeah.
so have a meeting with your boss, quit your job, ask him that the applicable time that's needed for you to leave amicably. Yeah, it's not good to burn your bridges. I think we can both agree on that.
No, not good to burn your bridges.
No, and find what you love. You know, take a bit of time to find out what it is, and then just go with it, follow it, and then just do it. Love them, love them.
Yeah,
Great
just
point.
do it. Yeah, just do it. And so many bosses are gonna be like, "What? When you?" And so no, but I thought about this. I knew this was coming. Jake gave me 24 hours, you guys, and so I'm like, since the pandemic is changing, and one last tip while we're on here, Twitter, the tweet company, run by Jack Dorsey, has said to its employees, you can work from home permanently. So a lot of these big companies are saying you can work from home permanently. A lot of these companies are looking at the workspace, and we looking at the workforce.
That's huge. I never knew that, and I was just speaking to someone about this on another show the other day. I can't remember who it was. I do these in such volumes. Sometimes the conversations start blending together. But we were saying that how is this going to impact the world? How's it going to change the world? How many people do you think go to work and love what they do, but just don't like the environment they do it in? Perhaps don't like the people they do it with. Perhaps don't like the people they do it for. And actually, now they've been at home, they've found that they're a lot more productive. They're a lot more happy. They're just essentially more productive and more happy because they're not having to do it in this environment they don't like. They're Okay,
And
they
they
have
don't do the 30-minute commute away from their kids either.
true. That's something I didn't think about as well. The commute, particularly if you've got
Right. You're
kids.
not
You know,
having to do the 45-minute commute, and they're not having, they can be in a home helping the next generation, helping raise the next generation. I have 2 friends that are doing that, and they're like, I want to help my family raise the next generation.
it's fantastic, and I think when you think back to the generation, certainly kind of our grandparents' generation, that was a bit more of the model then, wasn't it? People stayed at home a little bit more, a little bit longer to raise their kids in more of the family environment. Where now, now parents go out to work when their kids are, 1 year old, barely 1 year old. They go to nursery and they're going out to work. That's
Yeah.
changed a lot, actually. It's not something to really think about.
It's changed. No, and it's so funny because when my dad got diagnosed with lung cancer, when he was in the stages of getting diagnosed in the hospital, they told him that they said, you are going to have to move to a lower level than a high altitude. High altitude is not good for you because now you're on oxygen and you're suffering. And if you want a quality of life, you're going to have to move. So I walk in to his hospital and he announces to me and / my stepsister and my stepmom that he was looking up Phoenix, Arizona to move to at one point. And then he goes to me, well, what about your job? Because at the time I had my job. And I said, dude, I literally said that. I said, dude, I could quit my job in 2 seconds flat, carry my laptop and through the airport and work in the airport and following you, chasing you down the airport and making sure you get on the plane and I'll be fine. And he goes, what about your BFF? I said, my BFF wants me to live the best quality of life. I'll be fine. She'll understand what is happening. My job now is to take care of you / manage you / manage your help / manage me.
Yeah, it's about responsibility, right? And
Um, it's so funny because uh, the baby boomer generation is so used to clocking in, clocking out that they don't understand this whole internet podcasting thing.
It's interesting. At the scale it's happening now, I think there's over 1 million podcasts out there now, and I'm sure they'll be growing rapidly. That there's soon enough, just like there's magazines, books, publications, TV shows, albums, there'll be a podcast for absolutely everyone.
Yep.
Now, Win, and on that note, where's the best place for people? I know you do such a vast variety of things: the books, the podcasts, the social media, your business. Where's the best one place that people can find out more about you?
You can go to askwin.weebillers.com, and if you know how to subscribe to Drake's podcast, you pretty much know how to subscribe to any podcast, including Aswin. And please, 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 in Apple Podcast, if you listen to Jake's podcast, The Hunger for Side Hustle, please leave him a 5-star review in Apple Podcast in Australia, in the US. Now, if you're doing it in Australia, his home country, that's great. But if you're doing it in the US, that's also great. But Jake, here's a pro tip for you. You have to pull down at the bottom of Apple Podcast to see your reviews from the US, from the Australia, but please support Jake and his podcast and keep up the good work, you guys, and please support all independent podcasters and all independent content creators, especially those with disabilities.
Thank you, Win. Thank you for your support, and I truly Truly appreciate that. I've dropped a link, askwin.weebly.com. If anyone wants to connect with Win or follow the vast amount of things she's doing, that's the best place to find her. Win, thank you so much for your time today. And again, thank you for everything you're doing. I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Thank you.
Take care. Enjoy your evening.